Good morning. This is Tim Selden, president of the Montessori Foundation, and with me is Rob Amos, co-founder of Montessori Compass. And this is
Hi.
the Hi, Rob. Go ahead.
Yep, I was just going to say hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
So this is the second half of the session on using Montessori Compass for parent communication. Before we get started, I'm going to do a bit of the normal housekeeping that we have to do each session. The first is, if for any reason this is your first webinar with us, you are on hold. And you can hear and you can communicate with us by asking questions. So I'm going to draw your attention to where that is. There should be on the right side of your screen, whether you're using a PC or a Mac, there should be a sort of rectangular area, fairly thin, that is a shade of blue, light blue, and gray, and a little white. And it's labeled Go to Webinar Control Panel. And about halfway down, you should see an area with the word question in white. And there are little arrows that are start typically by being pointed horizontally to the right. If you put your mouse on it and you click, it drops and then that area is revealed. The easiest way to communicate with Rob and I is to ask a question by texting, like an instant message. Most of the session, because much of this is very pragmatic, Montessori Compass material, Rob will be doing the talking. When he's doing that, I'll be monitoring for questions. Whenever possible, I'll respond to your questions by instant messaging, usually to you privately. If I think that you've asked a question that really is apropos to the whole group, I will respond to all. So some of you may suddenly see something pop up on your screen. If it's a question where I think it's best addressed verbally, I'll wait until there's an appropriate break and I'll introduce that topic aloud. If any of you feel a desire to speak aloud to the group, if you'll text me and tell me you really wish that we would turn you on live, we'll again at an appropriate break give you that opportunity. We can't do that with everyone because the feedback loop would become horrendous. Last session we had some issue with audio. Rob and I have been working to see if we can get that corrected. We're hoping that you'll be able to hear Rob and I very well. I also, after the session was over, I did some adjusting of the sound to boost the volume before I uploaded it. Last thing, if you attended the last session, you probably noticed there were two separate recordings. The first one that I did, for some reason, the sound and the video got out of sync. Once someone sent me an email and said, Tim, were you aware? I went in and I was able to fix it. Unfortunately, fixing it takes about 5 hours. So I ran it overnight. The next morning I uploaded it and I sent out a second email. So should that ever happen again, just let us know. We really do monitor, and while we may not always be able to respond instantly, we certainly, between Rob and Anita and their staff and I and my staff, we try very hard to listen to everything you're saying and respond to each and every question. I want to remind you that this session is being recorded. The end of the session, all things hopefully going correctly, the recording will be saved. It takes about an hour or so to convert it, and then it takes typically about an hour to upload it, depending on where I am and how fast the internet is at that spot. And I will, when it's up and loaded, I will send an email out. So assume that'll probably be tomorrow. I'll send out an email with the recording. At the bottom of each of these, I've included the links to the recordings of each previous talk. Also, if you go to youtube.com and you look up my name, Tim Selden, you will find not only all of my other videos on various topics of Montessori, you'll find the various videos of the various sessions that we've done that address Montessori Compass. I'll stop for just a second. I see a question has come up. Toby, you've asked a question, are you supposed to be able to see me? The answer is no, although I can certainly show you my webcam so that you can see me. It wouldn't hurt, and hopefully it won't slow things down. Hang on, I'm just looking to see if I'm right. I think I can share my webcam. Nope, for some reason I'm not seeing an option of sharing my webcam. Hold on, one more screen. There, is it there? No, I'm not seeing anything saying that I can share my web camera. So it may be there and I may find it, and I'll certainly, if I find it, be happy to do that. But at the moment, I'm not seeing an option. Okay, back to questions. So you're just hearing me, you're not able to see me. I see that there are questions being asked, so hold on a second. I'll try to respond to them. No, it's just thank you. And I apologize that you can't see me. What you should be able to see on your screen right now is a slide, and that's basically what I'm going to be going over in a moment. The next thing is I want to remind you that these are professional development workshops, and if you're in the United States and that's useful to you, they are eligible for continuing education units, or CEUs. The Montessori Foundation is housed in Sarasota, Florida, and we work through our local branch of the National Accrediting Group for that, Sarasota County Technical Institute. In the emails that you've received, it should have given you information and a link for where you can download the application. Should you ever lose that and you send me an email, I'll be happy to send it to you again. My recommendation would be wait until you're complete with all of the various sessions and apply once, because there is a $10 fee every time you request a certificate of continuing education. Um, the way it works is every 10 hours of professional development is worth one continuing education unit. I can't promise whether they're accepted in your state or for your job. That obviously varies from location to location, and you'll have to check that out yourself. But if it's useful to you, it's one of the things we do. And many people who come to Montessori Foundation conferences and who work with the Montessori Foundation and the IMC find it to be something they really appreciate. Okay, so having done all of that basic work, again, we'll be taking breaks every half hour or so you can stretch, because this is a 2-hour webinar. If for some reason you have to leave, remember it is being recorded. So later you will be able to listen to it, and that qualifies you for continuing education unit. Obviously, it's on your word that you did listen and get value from the experience that you got in professional development. That's why we record them, and some people are going to be listening to this series of workshops later as they're recorded, because they don't want to stay up in the middle of the night if they're located in Australia or Asia. So today we're going to do the following things. We're going to review the importance of parent communication for Montessori schools. We're going to review the goals of parent communication within Montessori Compass. We're going to review some very specific features of Montessori Compass. That includes a review of the Communication Center. That's something that we looked at last session on Tuesday. And then we're going to begin specific new things. One is activity reports, how they're set up, what they look like from a parent perspective, what a parent sees, email notifications, and so forth. We're going to introduce the topic of trackers, which are an important feature of Montessori Compass. We're going to talk about reports of trackers, and then we're going to talk about probably the most interesting topic for many of us of all, which is the major progress reports that can be created within Montessori Compass. All of this assumes that you already have some familiarity with Montessori Compass and are looking to go in even deeper. I do want to remind you that Rob and Anita Amos and their team have created a fairly robust system of help and self training designed within Montessori Compass. Rob, I'm sure, will explain to you how that works. But I'm myself and my staff at our lab school continue to be surprised how quickly our questions get answered when they're able to look. Um, and I think without any further ado, I just want to say one more thing before I begin going on into the specifics of today's topic, and that is why am I talking as the president of the Montessori Foundation on behalf of a company that's selling a service? The answer is this. The Montessori Foundation was created to try to help schools. We've been developing curriculum, we've been consulting with schools, doing a lot of training of school administrators and trustees for now 22 years. The software that is Montessori Compass is the kind of thing that we have been looking for more than 6 or 7 years now. We've followed everything that's come onto the market. We've applauded each attempt that has come along. And remember, software is nothing but a tool. And people can solve these problems in lots of ways. The good old fashioned clipboard works. I think this works a lot better. You can use an Excel spreadsheet. It works. I think that this works a lot better. You can send out emails. This sends out emails. The bottom line is really lots of tools work. What we appreciate about Montessori Compass and the reason why we really got involved with working with Rob and Anita and their team was several things. The first is it by far, in our opinion, is the easiest to use and master. It is the most intuitive and has the greatest flexibility of anything we've seen come on the market. We're sure that other things will come along, but our take of it is Montessori Compass is well ahead of the curve, and they are continuing to develop so quickly that as non-stockholders and outsiders, we frankly are very impressed with the way these two incredible Montessori parents have thought about this and continue to respond. So if we had used foundation funds to create it, we couldn't have done any better ourselves. Secondly, we're really concerned about the issue of Montessori curriculum because most people have always thought of curriculum as their teacher's albums or a very simplistic list of lessons and activities. And that's not, in our opinion at least, anything close to what is really required in this day and age. We believe that the kind of scope and sequence that we've been working on going back to really the early 70s at the Montessori Foundation and before that the Berry School really represents the kind of trend that we highly recommend to all of the Montessori community. We don't think there's a one size fits all curriculum. We have too many different traditions around the Montessori world. AMI, AMS, many different societies that you may or may not be familiar with, and they all have somewhat different understandings of Montessori curriculum. Then there's issues of individual countries and states and the traditions of an individual school. So there is no one size fits all for a scope and sequence that's got any depth and breadth. On the other hand, there is a generalized nature of what is really important. And what we attempted to capture was everything that really is inherent in Montessori curriculum at this point up through age 12 or the American sixth grade level. Many people have asked whether or not secondary is coming. The answer is yes, but there is no standard curriculum for that age level yet, and we're having to give a lot more thought as to what is it we would put in there because every teacher education program, there aren't that many at secondary, is doing a totally different thing. So we're trying to figure out how we'll address that particular issue. In short, we really think that this is a very good product. It meets a lot of needs, and we use it ourselves. We certainly have no problem endorsing it wholeheartedly. We think it's been an important contribution. And without any further ado, Rob, if you go to the next slide. Thank you. Um, so this is, by the way, the same next three slides are slides that I showed last session on Tuesday. I'm not going to go into great depth. I'm just going to overview it quickly. Bottom line is, from a parent perspective, Montessori seems to be another language. We don't send home the kinds of paper that the average parent expects to see that tells them what their child is studying in school. As a result, from their perspective, a lot of parents feel that Montessori is this amorphous blob or this mumbo jumbo of weird language, and they can't really figure out what the children are learning. Some parents are fine with that. Many more parents appear to not be fine with it and get very nervous. And so while they'll be happy to put up with it when their child is 2 or 3, as their child begins to be 4 and certainly by 5, more and more parents are beginning to pull from Montessori and going to something else for a lot of reasons, one of which is the other option might be at a public school and may not have a cost. But it's not just that. It's that the Montessori experience is not always all that clear to them. And every one of us has the same challenge of trying to figure out how do we communicate to parents what we're doing. Go ahead, Rob. Thanks. Now, Montessori curriculum, as you and I know it, is rich and robust. This is just an image that I use as one of the many ways of trying to explain it to people. But what we know is that Montessori curriculum is not neatly divided up into English and social studies and math and science and so forth, but rather that everything interweaves constantly, and that quite often what we're doing is studying thematic units along with the fact that we have discrete lessons that are being presented through the apparatus or materials. Our curriculum is sophisticated. It's rich. It's particularly rich in areas where many schools in the United States are really not that rich. We tend to go into depth, whereas a lot of schools do what's called a mile wide and an inch deep. Lots and lots of topics that are briefly mentioned and skipped beyond. And what we're trying to do is encourage kids to become culturally literate, alert, and alive. But yet, with all learning, there should be something that's happening that you can actually measure. And I don't just mean on a standardized test, it's something you really know. Now, what are the challenges? Well, one of the issues is we tend to want to educate parents. And frankly, I don't find that the average parent likes that very much. They resent the idea that they need to be educated about anything. There are individual parents who actually want to know the answer to questions, and they are typically wonderful, excited parents who read whatever we ask them to or show up for meetings and discussions, and they're lovely people. But the average parent, frankly, doesn't have the time. We're busy as teachers and administrators, and parents, they're busy, very busy. So, from our perspective, we barely have the time to get through the day. We're observing, we're guiding, we're charting individual progress. We don't have a lot of time to educate parents at all, and parents are not beating down the doors to have us educate them. Same way, a lot of the stuff we do and talk about does not necessarily make sense to parents, and they're often embarrassed to admit it. Their child will come home and talk about the metal insects, or they'll talk about the racks and tubes, which some parents imagine as some sort of torture device. Um, the reality is, parents in general don't necessarily understand the weird language we use: sensitive periods, didactic apparatus, prepared environment, 4 planes of development, and all of that. This is not what they hear from their local public schools. They're busy, they're not likely to take the time to teach it to themselves, and their email boxes are absolutely overflowing with incredibly fascinating offers of trips to Iceland or whatever somebody is trying to sell them this day. Most people can't get through the day without having 400 or 500 emails bombard them. Ours get lost in the shuffle. And now, Rob, I think it's time for you.
I believe so. Thanks, Tim. Hi, everyone. My name is Rob Amos with Montessori Compass. I'm one of the co-founders, along with my wife, Anita, and very happy to have you all joining us here today. We're going to pick up where we left off with parent communication. And last week we were, excuse me, in the last session we were talking about some of the features that we have as part of our parent portal, which included messaging and calendar and photos. All of those are kind of straightforward. What we're going to talk about today, we're going to start off with our activity reports. It's important to note that all of the parent communication in Montessori Compass is opt-in. By default, when you set up your account, everything is turned off and nothing is shared with parents unless you choose to opt into it and then to actually go ahead and share it with them. So activity reports are a really nice feature that can really accomplish a couple of different things here. You can go ahead and choose to set these up on either a daily basis or a weekly basis, or again, not at all. And it contains a couple of different sections here, but again, you have full control over what the parents are able to see at all times. So let's go ahead and take a look at what actually is an activity report. Well, first off, it can contain an academic summary, basically helping the parent to answer the age-old question of what did my child do at school today. So we provide a list of the lessons or materials along with the corresponding elements, which are the measurable learning objectives that the child was engaged in. And then we also include as part of our scope and sequence, as most of you know, that we do have some really wonderful parent education materials. In many cases, we have a nice parent-friendly description of the lesson or material, along with a corresponding image. We specifically have images at the primary level. We don't have many in elementary at this time, but we're looking to add those as we move forward here. And you can always customize that and add your own images as well. But at the primary level, you have hundreds available to you, specifically in sensorial and practical life, math, and language. And the goal there, like Tim was saying, parents think the child was working with metal insects today. And the terminology used in the Montessori classroom is not always intuitive. And I think back to when we started as Montessori parents 6 years ago, I certainly didn't know anything about Montessori, and there's a real learning curve there. So one of the goals with the activity reports is you really can kind of passively educate a parent. Like Tim was saying, parents don't maybe resent being told kind of what to do or feel like they're being educated or whatever. But we're not asking them to take a crash course on Montessori here. We're not asking them to read a book. We're not even asking them to really do much of anything. Just learn about what their child was engaged in on a given day or a given week. And along the way, as the child is working with the Mendelin sets and the movable alphabet and the pink tower and so forth, they can learn about what those materials are and become much more acclimated with the Montessori classroom and all while staying engaged and just continuing to become more of a Montessori advocate as time goes by. The next part of it is we have trackers, which we're going to spend some time talking about. Those are customizable features that you can either choose to share with parents or to not share with parents. And it's basically anything that you need to keep track of, whether it's administrative in scope or classroom in scope. You can go ahead and keep track of those items, and then you can choose to share them or to not share. And then finally, with the activity report, we have notes. You can have a classroom note that goes out to everybody, or we can go ahead and send out notes to individual parents as well. So the first thing to talk about is the email notifications and the send time here. This is when your activity report is going to be generated. This is all done in our communication center in the backpack. So you would go in as a school administrator, you would go into your backpack and click on Communication Center. And this is where you want to customize the experience for the parent communication. So we strongly recommend using daily email notifications. If you're going to use any of the parent communication features whatsoever, we would strongly recommend choosing daily email notifications, which is basically a single digest email that will go out at a certain time of day, and then you choose the time of day that that message is sent. And most people, we advise choosing the end of the school day, maybe 6 p.m. or something. And then what will happen is at 6 p.m., the software is going to go ahead and scan all of your students and all of your parents and basically everything that you've done here, and it's going to look to see if there's any new data available for the parent. And if and only if there is something new, it'll go ahead and contact the parent and let them know that they might have new messages or new photos, or in the case what we're talking about now, a new activity report. This also happens to be the time that the activity report is run. So whereas during the day you might be, editing your record keeping, you're obviously the child's working on different things in the morning and then on into the afternoon. So you're continuing to modify that and add new lessons and make changes and add more observations and so on and so on. Um, so we don't share that with them in real time. You wait to go ahead at the end of the day, and then the activity report will be generated if you've recorded lessons or if you've entered comments or observations in our daily dashboard under the parent communication tab. So if there is something new that you entered for the child, the activity report is then run, in this case say 6 p.m., and then we would go ahead and publish that to the parent portal so the parent's able to view that information. If you do not record any lessons for that day, or you do not record any trackers, or you do not record any observations or comments, you're not going to have an and an activity report is not going to be generated. And if you miss that window where it's not generated, you're not able to go ahead and generate that one for, on this particular day. So it's important to note that you really, if you want to go ahead and utilize these, you want to make sure the information is in there prior to that time, again, the 6 p.m. time. And you can go ahead and if you're doing you can push that back to a later time if you would like as well. This is what your digest email is going to look like. Basically, it's going to have your school name in the subject. It'll have date, and it'll just say, "Hi, parent. The following updates have occurred in the last 24 hours," and it'll go ahead and list those out, whether it's a new activity report or new photos or new messages. And we also include the next 2 weeks worth of school events as well on the calendar. So those are kind of always front and center and available to them. And then they click on that link at the bottom. And the way most parents consume that is if you send these out at 6 o'clock, 6 p.m., at 6:02, it's going to be hitting their smartphones, which are almost always glued to their hip, and they'll see that notification come in, and they'll say, "Hey, my school sent me some new stuff today," and they'll go ahead and click on that link, and they'll be able to consume all the information that you shared. So that's how most parents are interacting with it. The settings for the activity reports, again, you can choose none, which is the default setting, which no activity reports are generated whatsoever. Or you can choose daily, which they'll go out at the end of each school day, or weekly, which would just be on every Friday for whatever activities were recorded over the course of a week. And then you can go ahead and choose whether or not you want your actual record keeping to be included as well. So you can see you can go ahead and toggle that on or off, yes or no. Do you want the record keeping that you recorded to be included on the activity report? If you select no, then no records are shared. None of that parent education information is going to be shared that we talked about with the descriptions and the images of the materials. So that's not going to be shared either. And then what would be shared would be any parent-centric trackers that you share. Maybe they're taking in, monitoring naps or diaper changes or meals or things like that, things that you would wish to share. And then the parent communication that's recorded in the daily dashboard, your observations or notes. So that would be the only thing that would occur if you have this turned off. You can get a preview of what the daily dashboard, excuse me, with what the activity reports look like in your daily dashboard. If you click on the parent communication, this is not entirely how it is presented to the parents. I'll show you how it's presented to the parents, but this is the data that it's going to include. Everything is right there. So let's look at this first part here. So I'm looking at James Bradshaw, and it says lessons today. You see today is bolded, and it says there's 4. So he had 4 lessons today. He worked with the spindle boxes, the matching picture to object, the fabric box, and the nuts and bolts. And you see little check marks next to each one of those. So let's go ahead and move forward. That is our academic summary. So you can see all 4 of those lessons are listed out there under the academic summary, and this is how it's presented to the parent on the parent portal. And at the bottom you see a link that says information about these lessons. That's going to be our parent or parent education information. So not only are we just presenting a list of the lessons or materials that the child was working with, you're going to have the ability to go ahead and educate them as to what these materials are all about. So if I click forward, now I'm seeing, this is the spindle boxes. I get an image there, I have a description, matching picture to object, the fabric box, and so forth. So you really get a much better understanding from a parent's perspective on what is actually occurring in the classroom. And instead of, again, like what Tim was saying, instead of the parents feeling as if they're being educated or they're being told what to do or told what to think or whatever, you're educating very passively in a very kind of non-threatening sort of a way. You're really, the parents, you're letting the parents know what was occurring in the classroom today, and in doing so, you're sharing a bit more about the Montessori method. You're really helping to demystify that and to really, let them know, a bit more about it, which is very, very helpful. And the more that you can educate parents, specifically the parents of the younger children, your 3-year-olds, even your toddlers, educating the parents of the younger children, you have a much better chance of them sticking around for the 3rd year of the primary cycle. In kindergarten, where there's always a drop off, there's obviously always a drop off in elementary. So the more that you can educate them early on, get them hooked on Montessori, get them to become Montessori advocates, the better opportunity you have to get them to commit to Montessori for the long term. The next part of the activity report is the teacher's observation here. Again, if you remember from our prior sessions, in the daily dashboard, this is where all the input is occurring. This is where everything that's going on in the classroom, this is how you're getting it into the system. You're feeding the system all this data. So, of course, you're doing your record keeping and your attendance, but you have the two the 2 options for classroom observations and then parent communication, where each child kind of has their own notebook, and every day you have a fresh sheet of paper in your notebook. So the classroom observations, remember, are private. Nobody but the staff sees that, so parents don't see anything on there. Parent communication tab that we're looking at right here, this is shared with the parents. This is something that you can very easily share with them. So for example, in the box on the left that says primary, now primary in this example is the name of our classroom, and by recording a note in there, that's a really, really easy way to go ahead and share with everybody at the same time. And then you can go ahead and record private or anecdotal notes for each child as well. So in the example, James had a busy day. He was very focused and enjoyed challenging himself with a wide variety of works. That note is obviously just for James, and it would be shared with only James's parents. Whereas that primary note, that's something that's kind of relative to the entire classroom, and it would be something that would be shared with everybody. So we recognize that it's not practical 5 days a week to record a private or anecdotal note for every single child, but it is a really good practice at the end of the day just to spend a few extra moments here and jot down an observation or a note or some comments or some thoughts, brief summary of what was occurring in the classroom, and share that with everybody. It really helps to bridge that gap, and while it's not personalized for the specific child, you can write it in such a way so it certainly feels from the parent's perspective like they really gained some valuable insight to what was occurring in the classroom. So let's take a look at what this looks like now. So on our classroom activity report here, our daily activity report, again, you had your academic summary, which we looked at. Now, these are those notes. So where it says, such a busy Friday, we spent a lot of time in the outdoor classroom today enjoying the beautiful weather. We also celebrated a birthday. Maria turned 5 today, and her family shared pretzels and ice pops with the class. Have a great weekend. So obviously, that's a general note. We're not talking to a specific parent there, but if you write these again in such a way, you really can help the parents to really gain some valuable insight to what was going on in the classroom. And it's that simple. A couple of sentences, very, very brief summary, but it certainly helps the parents to better understand what's going on. And speaking as a parent of 4 young children myself, I mean, parents really, really appreciate that. It's very meaningful from a parent's perspective just to have just a brief glimpse into the classroom, and so you can kind of engage your child at the dinner table and really just have a much better sense for what's occurring in the classroom during their day. And then the note below it where it said James had a busy day. He was very focused, enjoyed challenging himself with a wide variety of works. That's obviously a personal or anecdotal note, and that's something that would only be shared with James. So if you did not write a note just for James, his parents would still get that general note. If you do both, then the parents get both of them, and then this is how it's presented from the parents' perspective. So let me just go back there again. I want to just really make this clear here that this parent communication box on the daily dashboard is the best way to preview what the parents are going to see. So you have the lessons that you've recorded, you have your observation, and the next thing I'm going to show you is the trackers, but everything that the parents are able to see on your daily activity report is right here. If you're using a weekly activity report, it's just each of all 5 days of the week here. So you would go to Monday to see what's here and Tuesday and so forth. So let's go ahead and take a look at our trackers. So we're very fortunate to work with schools and all over the world, and we've learned a lot. And one of the core philosophies of Montessori Compass is that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to do much of anything. We give you a lot of different options and a lot of different ways of customizing the experience, both from the school's perspective and, of course, from the parent's perspective as well. One of the features that really demonstrates that philosophy very nicely is our trackers. So schools have asked us to keep track of, just about everything imaginable. There's just simply no way we could put every single thing in here exactly the way schools would want to use it. So trackers is a feature that you can go ahead and keep track of anything, whether it's administrative in scope or classroom centric, anything. You go ahead and you create your own customizable trackers, and then you can go ahead and record when a child has engaged in the activity or someone has turned in paperwork or permission slips, maybe crafts or classroom projects for your younger children, your naps and meals and moods and diaper changing and things of that nature. These are you're able to go ahead and share trackers with parents, or to not share with trackers or not share with the parents. And it works very similarly to the way that record keeping is handled. So in order to go ahead and set up your trackers, you go into your My Backpack and you scroll down to Trackers. And this is what it's going to look like. You're going to be presented with a list of categories here, and you would go ahead and create a new category, and you can choose whether or not you wish to share it or to not share it. The default setting is not share. The default for everything communication related is to not share. Again, you have to opt into everything that you want to share with the parents. But I can share this category of trackers with my parents. So if it's something like, diaper and toilet training, or if it's meals or naps or things like that, those are things that you probably do want to share with parents. If it's paperwork or administrative type things, those are things that you probably don't want to share with parents. So again, you have a choice at the category level here. And then you create your individual trackers. A lot of schools that we work with have in the past utilized paper templates, especially for your younger classrooms, about the meals and the diaper changes and the naps and so forth. So you might have a template where you have little check boxes, or you circle whether I ate a lot today, or I ate some today, or I wasn't interested in eating today, and maybe a little spot for to write a quick comment down about it. So schools that have those sorts of things in place, chances are you can probably take a look at what you have on that paper template and probably duplicate that while using our tracker feature. Not only are you being green and conserving paper, which is always a good thing, but you're also just doing it in a much more efficient manner. You're sharing it with parents, right here and on the parent portal. And you're also able to go ahead and keep track of all this, basically forever. You can refer back to, take a look at, that Susie, she took a nap back on October 25th, and you have all that information available to you. So everything is all going to be saved to the student's profile and is accessible at any time. Go into the next section, and then the way you would go ahead and record that is I would go ahead into my daily dashboard. Again, that's where the input is occurring. That's where you're feeding the system what's going on with the record keeping and your observations, and now with your trackers. You can do a search and you'll see all of the trackers that are relevant for this classroom. Trackers are much like record keeping with the lesson plans, are assigned to cycle years. So you can choose to, if it's something like paperwork, you can go ahead and choose to assign it to the entire school, all the cycle years, and it'll be available for everybody. If it's something like a nap, it's probably just going to be assigned to your toddler program. So you go and assign them based upon cycle years here. So in using the example of the meals, you go ahead and click meals. I ate a lot today, and you just simply track the individual child. You tap on their name. It's going to highlight just like record keeping, and then they're tracked, and then you can go ahead and record a note. And then you see here, again, right back to where we were here with the parent communication and the daily dashboard, this is your preview of the daily activity report here. Lessons, you have options for today, and then you have trackers. So I clicked on trackers, and you see the individual trackers that I have here. I ate some today. I had a great nap. I felt happy today. Whatever trackers that you're choosing to create, and if you track them, those are now available to be seen on the parents on the daily activity report. Now you have the ability to turn these off if you would like on an individual basis. So in this example here, you have the 3 trackers and you have 3 check marks next to them. If for some reason you wanted to record a tracker that I ate some today, you wanted to record that, but you did not wish to share that with the parents, you can go ahead and unselect that, and the check mark will be removed. And then that particular tracker will be recorded in the student's profile, but it will not be shared with the parents. And that works exactly the same as with the record keeping. Going back here, you see I have spindle boxes and picture to object fabric box. If for some reason I want to do record keeping, and for I don't want to let the parents know that the child worked with the spindle boxes today. I don't know, I can't really think of a case why you would want to do that, but you have that ability to do so. Our goal with Montessori Compass is to make this extremely comprehensive and and flexible. If you don't want to share that specific lesson, you can opt to turn that off. So the same goes for the lessons and the trackers. So again, this is your preview of how it is going to look from the parent's perspective. So looking on the next slide here, so this is how the trackers look now to the parents. So I recorded that the child had a nap, the child felt happy today, and the child ate some with their meals. And then you could go ahead and record notes. Maybe you want to tell them what time the child took a nap, from 12:45 p.m. to 2:15 p.m. It's a parent of 4 children, one of which is 18 months right now. Knowing when and how long a nap was is pretty darn important, especially around dinner time. If child did not take a nap today, that's very useful information. And things like the meals, knowing, how are they doing with their with the lunch I'm sending in? Are they actually eating it? This is, in this case, we see that the child ate the sandwich in the juice box, but they didn't eat the apple slices I sent in. Useful information. If the kid, isn't eating the apples, it's kind of silly to keep spending time in the morning when you're rush trying to get out the door and slicing up apples. So very useful information to go ahead and share with the parents. Tim,
Rob,
did you want
yeah,
to jump in? Go ahead.
yeah, just a couple of questions that have started to come up. The first is Joyce McGee asks, is it possible to break out trackers as a yes to share and the rest of the info is a no to share.
Well, trackers are completely customizable. So let me go over here to show you the live application to show you what this looks like here. So I go into my trackers. Let's go ahead and create a brand new tracker category. So I'm just going to call this the test tracker category. Now I can choose to go ahead and share this or to not share this right here. So you share it at the category level. So if I want to share, I click create, and now that specific tracker category has been created and it's shared with the parents. I don't currently have any trackers in it right now, so let me click add tracker, and we'll just call this test tracker 1. Now I need to go ahead and assign this to cycle year. So if this is a nap, I'm only going to go ahead and put this probably in my infant and toddler, rooms. If this is something that's like paperwork, an enrollment form, or something administrative, I can click all and go highlight everybody, because that's probably something that's relevant to the entire school. So we do have these shortcuts available here for you. So, but you tag this to cycle years, we'll go ahead and just choose all. So now this tracker has been created, and I can go ahead and add another one here. So I do test tracker 2. Maybe this one's just for the upper L classroom. Maybe this is a field trip permission slip, and I only want to only the upper L classroom is going on the field trip. I click create, and now that's been saved. So that's how you structure these trackers. If you want to make changes, though, I can click edit and say, you know what, actually I don't want to share this. So let me go ahead and do that. I'm going to uncheck that, click update, and you see it's no longer shared with parents. So if you look here at the diaper and toilet training, it says right there, this has 4 trackers, and it is shared with the parents. Whereas this classroom projects, you see that it's not shared. The enrollment forms, not shared, and so forth. So you just create as many of these as you would like, completely customizable, create your category, and then create your individual trackers underneath them.
Okay. We have a series of questions about reports that you may really have adequately covered, but let's just make sure. First off, we have from Miami a question of if I wanted to share reports every 9 weeks, since we have 4 progress report periods, then this is what I would like to do. Only having daily, weekly, or no option is too limiting. I certainly know you can create reports anytime. Anything you'd want to add to
Right.
that, Rob?
So what we're talking about right now, we haven't gone on to the more comprehensive progress report yet. We're specifically speaking about parent communication as it relates to either a daily or weekly summary. These are meant to be kind of fleeting, um, you know, um, uh, summaries of a child's activity. This is not meant to take the place of a more comprehensive progress report, which we have an excellent solution for over here, and we're going to be covering. This is where you have a detailed report as to what the child was doing, and much greater, greater detail, and that would be something you do maybe on a quarterly basis or a semester or once a year, however often you're running these. That's a progress report. We're going to get to that as soon as we finish with the activity reports. What we're talking about with the activity reports are really designed to be on automatic pilot. If you decide as a head of school, you sit down with your team and you decide that an activity report is a good thing, that sharing with your parents what the child was doing on either a daily or weekly basis, and doing so on an automatic pilot sort of a basis is a good thing. That's what we're talking about right here. And the way this looks, again, this is what a parent site looks like. I'm logged in as Mary Alvarez. This is the parent portal. So Mary has her messages here, and she has her calendar information, anything that we're choosing to share with her. Mary has photos to see about her child, and these are the activity reports. So if I click on these, and look like just like what I showed you there with the academic summary. Here's the lessons that this specific child was engaged in today: the pink tower and the sound cylinders, leaf washing, and so forth. I get the more information about the lessons. So here are the parent-friendly descriptions and the corresponding images, all geared towards the parent communication. and then I get the information about the trackers, again, the meals and the naps, and then those notes. So this is what the activity report is. Now, from a workflow standpoint here, the teachers in the classroom are not doing anything that they would not ordinarily do here. You're getting the added benefit of this pretty nice, sophisticated parent communication here. It's really detailed with those descriptions and images. You're really sharing an awful lot with them on automatic pilot, because you're recording that the child worked with these things already. You already recorded that whether you're doing it on paper or you're doing it in Montessori Compass, you're doing this record keeping anyway. So you documented that the child worked with the pink tower and the sound cylinders today. What you're getting the added benefit of with the activity reports is by sharing that in real time. And instead of just sharing names of lessons or materials that the parents have no idea what a pink tower or a sound cylinder is, you're getting the really nice benefit of having those parent-friendly descriptions and images. And all of this goes out on an automated basis, either daily or weekly. So this is something you can opt in. If you decide that sharing this with parents on a daily or weekly basis is not something you want to commit to, that's fine. The default setting is turned off, and you can just choose to share this on a more comprehensive basis, whether it be quarterly or per semester, or however often you're running progress reports a day. So you know, there aren't any extra steps. You're already documenting this information. We're just making it viewable for the parents, on an automated basis. So that's kind of how that works. I hope I
Um,
answered the question there
yeah.
somewhere.
Got a couple of other things. First, I just asked. Ah, never mind. Joyce McGee had asked a question, and I asked if she wanted to go live, and she says, "No, I just got my answer." Uh, Toby Gress has just asked a different question. Again, her answer may have just been given, but she asked, "Can trackers be made for special activities, i.e., a field trip, a permission slip, parent-teacher conferences, etc.?" Of course, I know
Trackers can be,
made for
yeah,
anything.
trackers are just anything. I mean, it's a total, kind of free for all here. Anything that you want to go ahead and record, create a tracker for it. A teacher can create their own trackers, administrators can create their own trackers. You probably want to have some sort of a general sense for how you want this structured, but you create your categories and you go ahead and put your trackers in. Again, the most common use cases are going to be for your toddlers, your diapers, naps, meals, your permission slips, your enrollment forms, any of the administrative kind of paperwork sort of things you need to keep track of. Maybe you want to go ahead and keep track of seasonal or temporary sort of classroom projects, things that might fall outside of the scope and sequence. Maybe you put a work or a craft on a shelf on a Monday and it's available all week long, and you want to just kind of notate when the child has completed it. Maybe, some of the children complete it earlier in the week, some not till later in the week, but you can go ahead and document those sorts of things as well. So it's basically anything that you want to keep track of. And then reporting, there's a number of ways to report on it, but one of the really nice ways is I'll show you from an administrator's perspective. I can go into Backpack Reports, click on Tracker Report, and we'll go ahead and choose enrollment forms as a good example of this, where obviously every school has a set of paperwork that you need to complete in the beginning of the school year. So things like the emergency contact and the health form and the medical and the photo, whatever forms that you have, whether it's 5 or 15 or 25, however many you have, you go ahead and load all those into here into the same category, and you get a bird's eye view that Maria, well, she's pretty diligent here. She went ahead and turned them all in. Carly, she's kind of slacking off. She only has 2. So you get a nice bird's eye view on which ones have been turned in and which have not. You can then print this out as a PDF. You may also download it as a CSV file. So you see, you can go ahead and print this out and download it as a CSV, which will then be something you can open up as a spreadsheet, and you can kind of view it in that context as well. If you have a lot of them, maybe we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in here. That's about the max for kind of how it looks kind of nice and viewable on the screen. Otherwise, if you get too many of them here, it kind of gets squished. But if you download as a spreadsheet, it can just go on infinite. So you can have 100 trackers in the same category if you were so inclined, and very easily be able to consume, as to who has done what on a spreadsheet. So picture a spreadsheet with your names of your students going vertically down the columns, and then your individual trackers going across. Or excuse me, your trackers going across horizontally, and you would be able to go ahead and view those.
Rob,
Yeah.
Renata's asked a different question. She asks if email notifications are set to daily and activity reports are set to weekly. The
Mhm.
parents only see the lessons that are given that week when the weekly activity report is set, correct?
So the activity report and the email notifications are different things. The activity report is again the daily or the weekly summary of a child's day, academic trackers, and the teacher comments. Now the email notifications, they will let you know when activity reports are available, but they'll also let you know if a new message is available, if you have new photos to view, what are the upcoming calendar events. So it shares with you more information. So by choosing your send time of, again, say 6 p.m., for example, at 6 p.m., Montessori Compass is going to look at all of your students. So if you have 150 students at your school, it's going to look at every single one of them, and it's going to go ahead and say, okay, this child has an activity, this particular school is set to run daily activity reports. So it's going to know to go ahead and round up all of the academic records, the trackers, and then the teacher comments if they are available. And if they are available, it will generate that report. If it's a weekly report, it's not going to generate that. If it's a Tuesday, it's going to know, well, it's a weekly report, so I don't have to generate those today, but I am still going to go ahead and look for messaging, calendar, and photos. And if there's anything new in those areas, it'll still generate the email to the parents and say, hi, parent, you have 2 new messages and 6 new photos, click here to log in. So those are 2 different things. On Friday, then if the weekly activity report is generated, then the email that goes out at Friday at 6 p.m. is going to say, hi, parent, you have new messages and photos, and you have this weekly activity report. Click here to log in. So the activity report is just one of the items that the email notification is searching for.
Okay. Rob, Lucy's asked a question. How do you remove a tracker that you accidentally added to a child's report?
Sure. So all of the trackers are added to the student's profile. So, well, let me show you the first way. So let me go ahead and record a tracker here. Let's say we're looking for the tuition agreements here. So if I click on John, now I've tracked him. It's auto saved, just like with your record keeping. There's nothing else I need to do. I have the option to write a comment here if I would like. But now this item has been tracked and tagged to John's profile. Because I'm still on the screen here, I haven't left yet, I have the ability to delete this. So if I say, oops, I didn't mean to track it for John, let me go ahead and remove him. Now that has been removed from John, and I can go add it for this student, Skylar. So very easy. If you're still on the screen right now and you have an oops moment, you just go ahead and remove them right then and there. You will notice at any time throughout the system where you're doing a permanent deletion of something, we're going to prompt you with an "Are you really sure?" notification, so you don't accidentally delete something. So that's what this pop-up is here. So now we're deleting that student, and now that's been removed. That's the first way. The second way is I can go into the student's profile. We'll go into Maria, and we're going to go over here to More, and I'm going to click on the trackers. So here are all of the trackers that have been recorded for Maria. So taking the example of the enrollment forms, so I can see that I can go look at the entire school year, for example, and here's all the enrollment forms that she's turned in. And if we want to get rid of this first one here, if we say, you know what, she actually did not send in the medical form, let me go ahead and I can edit this. I could change the comment, I can change the date it was sent in, or I can just go ahead and delete it altogether. And it's going to say, are you really sure? And I say, well, of course I'm really sure. So now that has been deleted. So very easy to go into a student's profile and then to make changes. And this is all going to be dynamic. If I go back to that big tracker report that I showed you earlier, with the enrollment forms, it's gonna appear as if Maria has not turned in the medical form because now she hasn't. So that's how the trackers were. For the recurring things, let's go look at this again. So we're looking at the enrollment forms, which are kind of one-time trackers. Let's look at something like naps. Let's see what we have in here. So here's all the naps that she took. So a nap would be an example of a multi-tracker, something that you're tracking multiple times. And you just see it's just listed in here, just like a lesson the child had. It's treated the same way. It has a date. There's the tracker. You have an optional comment, and you can edit and delete these as well. So if the child takes a nap every day, you can see all the different naps that she had here. And then you can choose to put in times here if you want to in the comments. So that's how you would go and view how a child has done on the trackers. And then you can go back and edit and delete them. Or you can view the entirety of the trackers by going into the reports and then choosing a category that you want to see and view everyone at the same time. You can view all your classrooms at the same time, or maybe you're just interested in a specific classroom. And if you download it as a spreadsheet, you can get, like I said, you could have 100 trackers on there, going across horizontally, and you can very easily see, kind of who has been tracked for what.
Rob, one of the big things that, again, many of the people that I've talked to, including my own teachers at Newgate, is whether or not to send out reports on a daily basis, a weekly basis, or basically to turn them off and only send out reports when we have major reports. And I know that was a lot. There was a lot of angst in our lives here at Newgate and the foundation about it. And I've noticed that I don't feel that way anymore. Do you want to speak to your own perspective about what's the advantage and disadvantage of different ways of handling that
Sure.
kind of reporting?
So I can speak to you in kind of two different contexts. First, as a parent, kind of, and this is where this all started. You have to remember that Anita and I are parents of four Montessori kids, and this all started as a result of us kind of being parents that were very engaged and wanted to know more, and wanted to work with our school to try to kind of figure out what was going on in the classroom. And the more that we learned, the more interested we became. We happened to be software geeks, and here we are 6 years later. A Montessori Compass is used in across every continent except for Antarctica, because we haven't found any Montessori schools down there yet. So that's been a pretty neat experience. But from a parent's perspective, they want to know more. As a parent, I would want to know every single day. I think back to my own kids, especially when they're younger. You can't get them to tell you what they did today. You hear that, Joey pushed me on the sliding board, and so and so, what happened at the lunch table, or at the, you hear about those sorts of things. You don't hear about the lessons. You don't hear about the academic or the social things, or anything that's really of any substance. So as a parent, I want more information. And as a new parent to Montessori, I would have loved a resource like this. When my child says, I worked with the metal insects, I actually know it's the metal insects, and I can get information about that. And I can talk to my kids at the dinner table and say, well, hey, Zach, I see you, you worked on some sensorial materials today. So, explain to me, what were you doing, and how, and so forth. You can really, engage your children and really treat them, like what they're doing during the day is very meaningful. It's very important, and it is. It's very important to them, and as parents, it's important to us. But the parents don't always know, and the schools in many cases are very reluctant to share, and we understand why, and the hesitations there. So as a business owner and as a software developer, obviously we're trying to be customizable. We're trying to, not tell anybody what to do. We're trying to give you basically a whole suite of tools and you choose to use whatever you want. We're not going to tell you how to do it. We're just going to give you a whole lot of different options, and you go ahead and customize it however you see fit. So while as a parent, I want more information personally, as a business owner or someone running a school, like I could see, from that perspective as well. So Montessori Compass, as far as the parent communication side of this, is very, very flexible. And you just go ahead and just check out that communication center and you choose to opt into whatever you're comfortable with and you kind of tweak it however you want. For schools that are kind of on the fence about the activity reports, and the activity reports are probably once you've made the leap that online record keeping is a good thing, and I think, it's kind of hard to argue that it's not at this point. I think most people can get to that pretty reasonably. It's probably the activity report and the parent communication side is definitely the most hotly debated topic as far as with what we're offering. And the daily activity report is probably the single most hotly debated item of all that. I think a lot of schools are typically tend to be okay with the concept of a parent portal and a calendar and the occasional photo album and even the comprehensive progress report. I mean, that's something you do once a semester or a quarter or so forth. No one seems to take issue with that. Those are just things you're doing anyway, and you're just tweaking it and doing it more efficiently, and you're doing it online. But those are not things that you weren't doing before for the most part. The daily or weekly summary, that's really would be the most hotly debated, and it's really something you need to be comfortable with. For those that are on the fence about it, I would just ask you to consider trying it weekly. Um, and by setting it up weekly, I think that you can really take a look at the big picture there and think that that can probably help you out in a number of ways. If you set the expectations in the beginning of the school year, where, okay, parents, we have this new tool that we're using. We're real excited about it. Montessori Compass, you guys are going to love it. It's a centralized place to go for your photos and your calendar, and you can message your teachers or message the administrators, much more efficiently, and everything's all in one spot. Parents will get that. These are Facebook users, and they're on the web constantly, have their smartphones. They're going to get that. They're going to appreciate that. The reports, though, if you set the expectations in the beginning of the year that this is something that we're going to do once a week, you're going to get it on Friday, that a summary of the list of things your child was engaged in, and then any observations the teacher wants to share, and if you're using trackers or not using trackers, whatever you're doing with that. But if you set those expectations that it's happening on Friday, I would venture to guess that your arrival and departure times are going to be much more smooth. You're not going to have parents trying to get a hold of the teacher to try to have that 2-minute conversation and try to figure out what's going on in the classroom. You might not be getting as many phone calls because parents know that on Friday they're getting something. So I think there's something to be said for that. I don't run a school, I run a software company, so I can't say from firsthand experience in that regard. I can speak to you from firsthand experience as a parent, and I can speak to you, what the type of conversations that we have with schools all over the world. But perhaps Tim can elaborate that by setting the expectations and, once a week the parents are going to get this information, there's a lot of benefits that are associated with that and probably lead to just kind of everyone being a bit more happy with things. Tim, is there, and I know, like I said, I don't run a school. Perhaps you want to maybe elaborate on that a little bit.
Why, absolutely, Rob. I mean, the bottom line is I started off probably as fearful as anybody because one, you never know what a teacher's going to write. You can just imagine whether it's a grammatical mistake or misspelling or just something really poorly worded. Your teachers could conceivably stick your foot in their mouth very easily. And so there's a whole issue, first off, of trust. You have to ask yourself, do your teachers really understand how important it is to be careful? Then there's the issue of, do you, as head of school, need to read everything? Or is there some scheme that can help? Because I don't care who it is, all of us tend to do better if we have someone else proofreading. But ultimately, the question is, if you communicate often with parents, especially if it's not just long winded reports, but rather short little tidbits of information and photos and videos and so forth, for the average parent, you can do more to bond them into your school than almost anything else you can do. It is amazing to see how they respond to frequent, and easily digested information. So I made the big decision after a year of agonizing and talking it over with my staff. We turned our system on live to daily reporting yesterday, and the world hasn't fallen in yet. So we're we'll let you know how it works out for us, but that's my instinct after a lot of thinking that this daily report is not really anywhere near as scary as it felt to me originally.
And as a school administrator, I mean, Tim mentioned that you don't know what a teacher's going to write and everything. Well, actually, you really do. You have the ability as an administrator to go into here at any time. And I think it's really incumbent on the school administration to kind of to put the standards in place, put your protocols in place. This is what is expected. You know, this is kind of how the school is going to do things, and if it's going to be once a week or once a day or whatever, you kind of have some general parameters, and you can go into here, and I can, as a school administrator, I can go into any of my classrooms at any time, and then I could review this. In most cases, you're not going to, the most time-consuming thing would be to, if a teacher were to write an observation for every single child, but chances are that's probably few and far between. In most cases, the kind of the normal use of this is going to be, you're going to write something here. You're going to write, today we learned about the life cycle of a frog, and we introduced our new tadpole tank, and we had a birthday today. Very, kind of simple stuff, a nice just general summary of what happened today. You spend a moment or two at the end of your day writing this down, and then it's shared with everybody. So this is the way most people use it. In the event that you need to contact the parents and you have something maybe anecdotal, maybe Maria had a special day and there's something interesting that you want to share, if there's something funny that you want to share. Parents love humor. They like it when your child says something funny. I still remember when my son, who's almost 8 now, I can't believe it, one of my favorite things, one of my favorite Montessori memories, is when a couple of years ago, when he was in the toddler room, and he said something. My wife is shaking her head, saying to not tell the story, but I think it's hilarious. It's just one of the things that stuck with me. He had dinosaur underwear, and the teacher said something about there's what was it? Come on, they were all family here, right? Can't we tell them? I forget how I'm gonna botch the story. He said something about there being dinosaurs on his underwear, and what was it? It's a good thing the dinosaurs don't bite, or I don't know. It was something like that, and it just struck me as hilarious that my teacher, she pulled me aside in the morning when I was dropping him off the next day, and just she was cracking up, and still cracking up about what he said. And sometimes, these students tell the funniest stories, and the interesting things occur. Things like that, parents eat that stuff up. So if something like that happens, that's kind of like a once a school year sort of a thing, that you get this funny sort of thing that happens. Jot it down here. I know. Good thing he doesn't bite. I've been sitting on him. Oh, that's what it was. This is my son, who was probably 2 or 3 at the time. He said, "Oh, it's a good thing the dinosaur doesn't bite because I've been sitting on him all day." So here we are, 4 or 5 years later, still talking about this, and it's just that's the type of thing that you can share in here.
I'm sure I'm glad I'm not your son.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
My
I'll be telling that
goodness,
story at his
at
his
his
high school
wedding.
graduation
There
probably.
you
Yeah.
go. A couple of new questions. First
And
off,
Tim, hang on just a quick second. Let me just wrap this up
sure,
here.
sure.
Sorry to kind of go off on the dinosaur thing there, but um, in any case, as an administrator, I can look at every single one of these things. So if I have 10 classrooms at my school, in most cases, you're going to have a note right here. It's a single note. You can read every single one of them, pretty efficiently. And then you can scroll down. You can see Maria's had 3 lessons. John's had 2. Uh-oh, Juliana doesn't have any lessons. And you might want to ask, did Juliana do anything today? I mean, you might want to make sure that every child has at least something in there if you're sharing those. The trackers, again, those are kind of optional whether or not you want to use them. But it's very clear from an administrator's perspective what is being shared with the parents all right here. So this is your preview, and you need to make sure it gets in there before that send time. If you chose 6 p.m., if it's not in there by 5:59, the activity report is going to be generated at 6 o'clock. And if there's nothing in there, it's not going to generate. So you make sure you get things in there by the end of your school day. Okay, Tim, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's great, Rob. Thank you. We all continue to learn new. Toby asks, how do the photos become available? If we take pictures on an iPhone, then what happens?
All right, so photos are different than what we're talking about with our activity report. So we're talking about photos last time. You can go ahead and create an album for anything that you would like, whether it's something you want to share with the entire school, something you want to share with just an individual classroom or an individual student. You get these nice slideshows here where you can write captions. The parent can download the file. You click through, and it's obviously a great way to show off your classroom and a great way to showcase the materials. And it's another parent education tool, quite frankly, the more you show them of the Montessori classroom. So the way it's shared is you set the permissions here as to who you want to be able to view it. Do you want the whole school to be able to see it, or just a classroom, or just an individual? The way you get the photos into Montessori Compass is by uploading them. So while you can take a photo with your phone, and you can add them in here if one at a time if you want, that's kind of time consuming. What I recommend to people is the easiest way of doing this is to drag and drop via your desktop. So I have a whole bunch of photos over here, and if I go ahead and grab a couple of these, I'll grab 4 of them. I can drag them right into my browser. I click upload, and now I'm uploading 4 photos at the same time. That just as easily could be 40 photos if I wanted to. So uploading them in bulk is by far the easiest way. To get from your phone to your computer, because you can only do that on a laptop or a desktop, would be use a service called Dropbox, which I'm a big fan of personally. I have an Android phone that I personally use, and we're always taking photos of the kids doing stuff. You can point and click with your phone, and then it'll sync with Dropbox in the cloud via Wi-Fi. So as soon as you click with your phone, it's saving it to your phone. But then if you're on a Wi-Fi connection on your phone, it'll sync to Dropbox, and then Dropbox will sync to your desktop or laptop. So I have a Dropbox folder right here with all my own personal stuff in it, and anything that I would take on my phone is going to end up right there. And if I take 20 photos in my classroom today, all 20 photos would then be on my laptop or my desktop, and I could upload them in bulk here. So that's by far the easiest way to do this.
Good. That's really helpful for a lot of us. Um, the next question that's come in is, can you show us how to add a lesson in the scope and sequence? A little bit out of what we were going to do today, but what do you say,
Sure.
Rob?
Yep, the curriculum lesson plans link you want to click on here. The scope and sequence, very comprehensive, ranges from infant through age 12. Of course, that was developed in collaboration with the Foundations team, and has been aligned to the Common Core state standards. So all of your categories are right here. It's very comprehensive, and chances are if you look through it, you can search, use this universal search here. I type in something like sand. It's going to go ahead and pull up all the sandpaper lessons, as well as the thal, sand, chain, anything with SAND in it. Now, you'll probably find a lot of what you're looking for. If you wish to go ahead and augment what's here or to edit what's here, you certainly can do so. If I want to go into, say, math, I can then click on a subcategory. Just add a lesson right here. Adding lessons, editing curriculum at all is an administrative feature only. Teachers are not able to edit curriculum because it affects the entire school. If you want to edit curriculum, check with your school administrator. A lot of schools have a curriculum editing account. You'll just create an administrator profile that can be shared amongst people who are authorized to edit curriculum, but it's not something you use on a daily basis, because if you make a mistake in here, it can go ahead and affect everybody. So I create my new lesson. I can put my description in here. If I want to put some private teacher notes, I can. And then your lessons are all tagged to cycle years. The way the software is developed, it's one giant batch of curriculum ranging from infant through high school, and it's organized based on cycle years. So if this was a lower L lesson, I would simply go ahead and tag it to, in this case, first, second, and third, and then it's going to go ahead and be available for record keeping and lesson planning in classrooms that have those cycle years. So my lower L classroom has cycle years, and this particular lesson has cycle years, and that's what would make this lesson now become available. I then have the ability to add a photo if I would like. I also have the ability to add a video if I would like. and I can sequence it anywhere I want within these subcategories. That's at the individual lesson level. Now I can also add subcategories. So now I'm in the large category of mathematics, but this is maybe Rob's new math subcategory. So now this particular subcategory could be created. I could sequence the subcategory anywhere I want, and then I could create a whole new set of lessons within this particular subcategory. And then I would also be able to do so at the category level if I would like. Look at the categories here. Maybe your school has a special language program or a music program or something like that, and it falls outside of our scope and sequence. So say, for example, you have a Spanish program. I can go ahead and create this, and then I can go ahead and click the create category. That category would then be available. These descriptions here, these are all for the progress reports. And I'm going to show you what this looks like, but you can have a description for the category, again, for the helping with the parent education. I'll show you this in action. So now the Spanish program category would be available. Then I would create subcategories and lessons within there. So that's how I would go ahead and create these on the fly here. Alternatively, I can go into our customer support and go ahead and search for the word import, and you'll see importing curriculum is one of the options that's available. And I click import curriculum, and you just read through this, and then you can download this spreadsheet and follow the sample template, and then we can go ahead and import any sort of custom curriculum that you would like to have added. Hope that answers your question.
That's a good one. Let's see, we've got a few more new ones, all minor at this point. Can teachers report behaviors in the trackers?
Well, the trackers have a comment field, so you can write anything that you would like. So if you want to record certain types of, I guess the closest thing in here, we have something called, yeah, feelings or moods. I've seen this schools use before. Things like I felt happy today, or I was, grumpy today, or I participated in, today, or I did not participate. Things like that. You can kind of create your own trackers to kind of define some of those sorts of areas, and then treat those as trackers. Or you could just go ahead and write a comment in here as well. So if you have, yeah, the meals, I ate some today. If I track her, I could say that, Maria ate her sandwich, but, didn't eat her apple slices or something to that effect. So I can go ahead and use that note field for recording those sorts of things as well. If you don't want to formalize the behavioral sorts of things, but you want to communicate that maybe you don't want to have a formal tracker that says I felt happy or I felt grumpy or I was, participating or, not whatever. If you have a formal set of terminology that you wish to use, then track them, you can do that. Or you can just go ahead and say it here. John was very focused and engaged today as he worked with the thermic bottles. He thoroughly enjoyed determining the differences and so forth. I could say that he was, really happy today and he had a lot of fun and it was a pleasure to have in class, or maybe he didn't have his best day today, and whatever you want to share. This again, it's just a text box, and you can go ahead and kind of formulate any narrative that you would like to share with the parents.
Great. Here's a comment from Renata Faccioli. She said, I pushed myself last year to turn the weekly activity report on. And I was very anxious about it at first, but after only a few weeks, I felt the relationship with my parents deepen. It's an amazing tool and well worth using. Like Rob said, it's an autopilot kind of thing. So thank you, Renata, for sharing that.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate that, Renata. That's something that, yeah, we would certainly agree. There's a lot of people that are a little nervous about that and apprehensive about turning those on and kind of lifting the veil as to what's going on in the classroom. But I would argue that in most cases, it's really good things that are happening in the classroom, really amazing things. And my argument with running a software business, well, your school is also a business as well. Why keep it a secret? Why would you want to be, kind of playing devil's advocate? Why would you want to be the best kept secret in town? Why would you want to have an amazing classroom with really amazing things going on and not tell anybody about it? This is just a way to kind of, once it's on automatic pilot, it's just it's business as usual. You're doing your thing in your classroom. You're in a Montessori environment and you're doing your thing. The children are enjoying themselves and they're making a lot of progress. And this is just kind of helping to tell the story. And the parents are the ones that are going to be at the play groups and the birthday parties and, telling their friends about it and so forth. You want them to talk about their school. I can tell you from all the birthday parties we've been to, the kid parties and things like that, and getting with our own peers, they're always talking about school. They're always talking about what their kids are up to and all. You want these parents singing your praises. You want them singing the praises of Montessori. And this is a nice, easy, passive way of doing it that does not mean any extra work. It's what you're doing anyway. You're just putting it on automatic pilot, and it's being shared with them.
Great, Rob. Here's a new question. If you send emails to parents every day, will the parents of children who are absent or do not attend school on that particular day of the week still get the email?
Now, if the child's absent, then they would not be getting anything because it's only going to go out if they're there and it was recorded for them.
On the other hand, if you send a broadcast email, you can send a broadcast email to parents anytime, right? It's not the daily dashboard parent communication type.
So yes, I want to clarify our terminology though. So what we've been talking about is the activity reports, which are automated. You turn them on whether daily or weekly, but that input is done in the daily dashboard. The messaging, what you're referring to as email, this is actually not email. It kind of people think it's email, but this is an internal messaging system from one Montessori Compass account to another, similar to how you can message someone on Facebook or something. You can go ahead and choose all school and I send out my message, and then this message is going to go out to everybody. But I had to manually do that. That's something you do on a kind of onesie twosie basis here. I'm choosing to send a message today about something. I'm sending it out to the entire school, or I'm sending it out to the entire classroom, or I'm sending it out to just an individual set of parents. So that you certainly can do. And if that message goes out, that would trigger an email notification. Again, email notifications are their sole purpose in this world is to notify the parents when there's something new to look at in Montessori Compass, to nudge them, to get them back into the system. Because we do not pass information outside of Montessori Compass. So you're consuming it as a parent. You consume all of the information within Montessori Compass, but the email notifications just say, hey, parent, you have some new stuff. Click here to log in. So messaging triggers that, photos triggers that, activity reports triggers that, and the calendar is included as well. So that's how these activity reports are. Or excuse me, that's how the email notifications work. So the messaging is a manual message that you choose to send out today, but the activity reports are the automated thing. So by recording that the child worked on the movable alphabet today, and I go ahead and go back here for the example. So I click on Maria. She worked with the movable alphabet. I have this on here twice. I did it twice by accident, but there's a puzzle right there. So all of this is going to be shared with her, and as well with her parents, and then these trackers as well, along with the corresponding comments.
Okay, here's a quick one. Has anyone ever imported the Albanese curriculum in?
We've had schools that have done that on their own, and that's something that you're certainly able to go ahead and edit curriculum any way you see fit. So I know that there are schools that have used that, and I know there's schools that are interested in having that be something that is that we're able to make available, and that's something that Albanese would need to make available to us and give us permission to do so. We have not. We're in the process of trying to communicate with them and try to get that resolved, but that's still currently up in the air.
We have another question. When you import curriculum, will it link automatically to the national curriculum?
I'm sorry, what was that?
If you import curriculum, will it automatically link to the Common Core curriculum.
Oh, yeah, yeah, no. There wouldn't be any way to do that. Any curriculum that you import is going to be completely separate from what we're providing. There was, as Tim is full aware, that was an enormous amount of work from a lot of really talented educators who were involved in the alignment process. So you're basically taking a very comprehensive Montessori scope and sequence that has been developed over the course of a number of years from a lot of different people, a lot of input from people from around the world, and then taking that Montessori scope and sequence and taking a look at the U.S. Common Core state standards and making a correlation between them. That was an enormous project and something that you can imagine anything that you would import, it's not apples to apples. So it's going to be different. It would be treated as its own version of the curriculum, and you can feel free to use that, but you certainly would not have the alignment. With that said, if you were so inclined and you wanted to go ahead and do the alignment on your own, we have a number of schools from other parts of the world who have different sets of national or state or provincial standards. You can certainly go ahead and the software will support that. It's labor intensive. I mean, the software part of it, the kind of clicking button part of it isn't very hard, but when you're talking about hundreds, in our case, it's thousands of lessons. I mean, it's nearly 3,000 lessons, and trying to align that to an alternate set of standards, it's a pretty big job,
Sure.
but it's certainly possible.
I will go further. I've never looked at the Albanese quote curriculum, but I'm imagining what that actually looks like is a list of tasks that kids work on, which are hopefully behavioral objectives, and it shows the link to the specific Albanese curriculum task cards that are used to either practice or measure whether a child has that. And one of the things that I've noticed over the years is that most of the people who have worked within Montessori curriculum have not really gone to the extent of producing something that would normally be understood to be a full scale, taxonomically correct scope and sequence, behavioral objectives, and curriculum. It would seem to me that the easier way to handle that might be to take a copy of the standards that we have now, which are linked to the National Common Core, and simply do a little editing where you make a note of Albanese card XYZ and let that be the link. And that can be searched for in two ways. You could do it the way you would normally search for it in terms of scope and sequence, the behavior, or a keyword like golden bead or dynamic addition, or you could put in the Albanese code, which is what I'm imagining that looks like. Now, again, I haven't used it. I'm not sure that my understanding is correct, but I think that's correct.
Right, and Tim, just to kind of add how our curriculum is structured, it's much different than probably some other things that are out there. Again, I'm not going to speak about Albanese. That's not something I'm proficient with, but the way our curriculum is structured is with the measurable learning objectives, those are what are aligned to the standards. It's not the lesson or material. There's some other things out there that have, there's been attempts to go ahead and make a correlation between materials and standards. That's a much different approach than what our team did in collaboration with the Foundations team. What we did was to take not the material, because the material, you can do a number of different things with a Montessori material. What we were able to really do is to dig into what was going on with these materials. What is the child actually engaged in? What is the measurable learning objective? In the software, we use the term element. So we decided to go ahead and go that route because it was much more accurate account of what was actually occurring in the classroom, and a much more accurate alignment to the standards. So, for example, if I choose a material such as the metal insets here, and I could go ahead and choose. I mean, go ahead and pick a different one. Can you make a suggestion that I can illustrate this point better? Okay, let me just use pink tower. So I'll choose the pink tower, and you have a material, and you have the different things that you can do with the pink tower here. So it works with materials as presented, placing cubes in relation to one another to demonstrate visual discrimination of size in 3 dimensions. So now you've chosen exactly what the child did with the specific material, and then it is the element or the measurable learning objective that has been aligned to these standards. Hang on just a second. I'm going to try to get you another illustration here. Is this the best example being sensorial? Should we choose math or language?
This will be. Watch.
Okay. I have my wife Anita who was involved in the curriculum alignment project, and she's clicking on my computer and going to demonstrate something.
These are the standards.
So here are standards here. So all this is straight from the Common Core here, and what we did is documented the child work with this specific sensorial lesson here, obviously the pink tower, and this has been aligned to actually a language. So what we're showing you is a cross-curricular alignment. What's that?
This is actually a math standard.
This is a math standard, okay.
Taken directly from the Common Core.
Okay, so all this is from the Common Core. So this is kindergarten math. What's the MD stand for, Anita?
Measurement and data.
Measurement and data. And we're showing you how a sensorial lesson with the corresponding measurable learning objective has been aligned to meet the specific standards, as is all these other lessons here, the thermic bottles, the Barrick tablets, the Brown stare, with these corresponding measurable learning objectives as well. Okay, so
Great.
it is much different than getting a list of lessons and trying to make an alignment.
Boy, do I can't tell you how much I echo that. We've watched for years as schools have attempted to communicate either internally from one class to the next, or from one level of the school to the other, or to go back over time and to document what a child really knows. And other than standardized testing, we don't usually have anything that provides reliable data. This has all been worked on so carefully over so many years to get it to where it is today. And we're assuming that for most schools, this will meet your needs. And then there'll still be some who want to add still more information to an individual lesson or element within a lesson to make it even more refined. And you have the ability to do that if you want to. But the key here is we really have tried to look for every single I being dotted and every single T. There's always more, but if you simply work with what's there, you've got more than most people will ever get around to. We have some new questions. This one goes back to the issue of trackers, Rob.
Okay.
Lamia, Lamia asks, how do we add a tracker under a category? For example, under meals, I would like to add, I shared my meal with a friend.
Mm-hmm. So if I go under meals, I can go ahead and create as many different trackers underneath the category of meals that I would like. So if I shared my meal with a friend is one of the trackers that you would like to have, you can go ahead and create that, and maybe that's something you want available for whatever cycle years. Let's just say you want to put that in your primary room. I go ahead and click create. Now that's one of my trackers that's available. I go back to my daily dashboard and I do a search. I'll just do a search for the word friend. You see meals, I shared my meal with a friend. That's now a tracker that's available in your classroom. And I just click track, now I'm done. If I want to go ahead, this particular category of meals is shared with the parents, but I can just as easily not share it. And I can add a comment. So Maria, shared with Susan. And now that has been documented as well. That'd be a little comment that you would be able to include if you were so inclined.
Okay, here's another question that's come in. How do you record, hang on, how do you record a lesson on an individual student's parent activity report?
How do I record a lesson on a student's activity report?
Individual students' parent activity report.
Okay, so the The activity reports, again, those are things that you set on automatic pilot and just occur behind the scenes. It's not something that you necessarily are thinking about during the day. You're just recording whatever happens in the classroom. So your record keeping, there's a number of ways to do record keeping. But for example, if it's a child's independent work time and this child was working with the spindle boxes, I go ahead and type in the word spindle. I choose my lesson. I can choose my measurable learning objective over here, these elements. So maybe they were working with the spindle boxes and they demonstrated understanding of 0. And then I tap on Maria, maybe she was collaborating with William. I'm done. This has all been auto-saved, and I'm just doing my record keeping. So if, for those that have been doing, paper record keeping for years or have been using alternate systems, a spreadsheet, whatever you've been using in the past, you were documenting that the child worked with the spindle boxes already, but you're just doing it in here. So now by doing it in here, this is now going to be available to be included on that activity report. So I click back on Maria, and you can see spindle boxes is one of the lessons that's on here now as something that will be included on her activity report if we're doing this on a daily basis or a weekly basis. In addition to the name of the material that, 99 out of 100 Montessori parents, and especially the new ones, are not going to know what a spindle box is. You're going to get that parent-friendly description and corresponding image so they do know what the spindle box is.
Good. Let's see if we have anything more coming in. A couple of more. Sorry. Um, can can you show again how you found the specific element in the scope and sequence in the Common Core?
So you can go into our scope and sequence. You can view it by lessons. So I can go ahead and search for something. The structure is category, such as art, music, and movement. Subcategory, basic art skills lesson, holding a stamp. That's the name of that particular lesson. I can scroll on down. I can see cosmic studies and geography and math and language and everything else here. So let's go ahead and go into math. So the category of math, here's all of your subcategories. We'll go into decimal system 0 to 10. We go into, say, the spindle boxes. Here's your cycle years that are associated with this material. Here are your curriculum elements, which are the measurable learning objectives that are associated with this material. Here's the parent-friendly description that's associated with this. Here's the parent-friendly image that's associated with the lesson. And then all of these elements here are what are aligned to the standard. So if I went ahead into the element view of this, and instead of viewing this by the lesson or materials, I can view this by elements. I can go into the same category, mathematics, but look how many of them there are. So I'm saying it's a big job, 1,700 of them just in language alone, 800 of them in math. Let's go into mathematics and go back into my decimal system, and now you can see count to 10 by units using the red and blue number rods. Associates the numeral to the quantity using the red and blue number rods and numeral cards. And go on down the list here, and I can just choose any one of these. Let me find one that has multiple standards. Here's one. Counts to 10 by units using the cards and counters. That's the name of the objective, the measurable learning objective or element. Lesson, this is the name of the lesson or material, your numeral cards and counters 1 to 10. And then these are the standards that have been aligned to the specific objective. So from a workflow standpoint, a teacher in the classroom would have gone ahead and done a search. If this was an independent work time for a child, you'd do a search for numeral cards and counters. You would then choose counts to 10 by units as the objective that it comes in the drop box that's associated with it, or the drop down menu. And then by choosing that and tapping on the child's name, you're right back to work in your classroom. You at no point even thought about standards of any kind. But then all of these standards were aligned at the same time. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different standards in this example here are all met by working with this. And all these standards are straight from the Common Core. So the same lesson, lesson from a Montessori scope and sequence might meet a half dozen or 8 or 10 different standards at the same time. So that's and the same standard might have a dozen or more different Montessori lessons that are able to meet it. So it's a very sophisticated, comprehensive alignment, and it's like I said, there's different ways of viewing it in here. I can also go into the individual standards themselves and view them as well. So if I click on any one of these, here's one for phonics and word recognition in for language, and you can go into these and see these are the individual standards. This is all just straight from the Common Core. It's just something, it's very, very vast and something you need to just kind of click around to try to get acclimated to. But it's a lot. But really the most important thing to note is that it occurs behind the scenes, and at no point in the classroom are you ever given a moment's thought to standards of any kind. You're solely focused on a Montessori environment, and that's it.
Okay, here's a new one. If we send out a weekly activity report, all of the lessons we work with for the week will be shown, right, for an individual child. So, for example, 20. Now, if they worked with the same lesson each of the 5 days, would that lesson come up in the report 5 times or only once in that weekly report?
Well, it's going to be treated as an individual instance, and that would be a use case for turning them off here. So if you remember, and I have an example of that right here in front of us. So today, Maria's had 5 lessons, and I accidentally recorded her as working with the movable alphabet twice. Now I could go back and delete that if I wanted to, or I could just go ahead and click on this, and it's going to remove it. So by unchecking this, now this specific lesson here, in the case of large movable alphabet, has been will end up being excluded from the activity report. So if this were a weekly activity report and the child worked with the movable alphabet, you know, every day, 5 days straight, and I didn't want to share that, I only want to share it one time, you could go through and uncheck those, or you just leave it there because it is an accurate account of what the child was doing. So it's up to you to determine whether you think it's a good idea to go to the trouble of removing them and hiding them from the parents. But you know, if they work with the movable alphabet 5 times, I don't know that that's necessarily a bad thing. I think it's a personal preference on what you're comfortable with.
Okay. Stephanie asked if we could show a lesson from the upper levels.
Sure. So you can go into our curriculum lesson plans, and we'll show you something in math. So again, mathematics is a big category. Starting at the concept development, you start at toddler and you work all your way down. You can see through these subcategories, you know, irrational numbers and inequalities, square roots and polynomials, and quite frankly, a lot of things I forget how to do most of this stuff at this point. Now you're looking at things that are in elementary, so understanding square roots as the inverse of squaring and finding square roots with simple squares. And you know, click on any of these. These are all things that are going to be, you know, as you go on down to the sequence, you're going to see things that are associated with lower and upper L. And the upper L lessons, we've aligned a number of them to meet standards in 7th or 8th grade, because the Montessori scope and sequence in many cases is outpacing the Common Core. And when that occurs, we go ahead and take that into account. So an upper L, you know, student might be meeting something, a standard that's in 7th or 8th grade. So that's all part of this as well.
Okay. Let's see if we have anything new. Yep, a few more. Nancy says, "I'm sorry, I still don't see how you, Rob, went into an element in our scope and sequence to the standards that go with it." So I assume what she's saying is she's confused at how do you know which Common Core standards are connected with an element. Can you just show that again?
Sure. So you can go into all of the lessons have the corresponding elements that are attached to them. So going back into, I'm sorry to keep going back to primary, but I'm not an educator, I'm a software geek, so it's a little bit easier for me to understand the primary than it is for me to spend time in the upper L. But it is all there, and we had really smart people that were involved in the scope and sequence project. Myself, I was not involved in that project, so that's why I keep referring back to primary. But conceptually speaking, to show you how it works, this is a good example here with our spindle box as a material. Here's the different things you can do with the spindle boxes. And then you can go into your elements over here And you can search by element as well if you wanted to. Um, you might be able to find, maybe more and more of what you're looking for in the elements as opposed to the actual materials, especially in elementary. So if I click on mathematics, now I'm not looking at, red and blue number rods anymore. I'm looking at the specific objectives that are associated with the materials in this classroom, or excuse me, in this area of the classroom. And I can just scroll on down and see any of these. So demonstrating awareness and understanding of zero as a placeholder. I click on that. Here's the name of the lesson that's associated with it, again, the golden beads. And then here are the standards that are associated with this specific objective, not with the material, with the objective that the child's doing with the material. So all of this information is in there. It's important to note for those of you that are Montessori Compass subscribers, and have the new scope and sequence, because some of you may be subscribers that used this last year and using an old curriculum. You have the ability to contact us, and we will give you all of this new stuff. That's an upgrade that you can go ahead and we'll make available to you. For those of you that are more recent customers that are signed up for this year, you'll have access to all of the scope and sequence for the cycle years at your class at your school, along with the corresponding standards from K through 6. Those are the standards that we have available, and we have some in 7th and 8th grade for a handful of the upper elementary lessons. If you are not a Montessori Compass customer currently, you're currently on a free trial. You do not see all of the standards. You see a few standards to show you how it works, but not all the standards are going to be on your site. Just want to point that out.
Something else I want to point out that, again, it isn't part of parent communication, but I think is really important. This scope and sequence is more than just a better version of what people are used to. There are pieces that when we really dug into this, Anita and her team really kept pressing the Montessori side of the family into, well, how do you guys teach this? How do you teach that? Rob, I don't know if Anita's sitting next to you, but if she has the ability, it would be great to have her take them through a really quick look just at how we've got the scope and sequence for teaching composition and writing.
Sure. She's been answering phone calls here feverishly while I've been doing the session here, but so I can't get her on to this particular call right now. But so you're asking about writing, Tim?
Yeah, go into language arts and let's just give people a quick visual tour of some of that because in comparison, as Anita pointed out long ago, we looked at many, many, many different albums from
Uh-huh.
many different traditions. And in general, what people were doing is going to some kind of canned program from the public sector, which is fine. But what we've done is we've added that in here. And regardless of how you do it, whether you were trained to do it by your training program or whether you're using some sort of pre written program, whether it's Albanese or whatever, the stuff is in here to show you how to track it. And tracking is also planning. So I'm hoping that what you're seeing on the screen is making sense to you. I certainly, those of you who have full accounts, I really strongly encourage you to take a hard look at it because that's an area where many of us really have not seen anything this carefully written out in a curriculum scope and sequence. At least not coming out of Montessori. We see it in public school curriculum, but not like this. By the way, I've got one person who says, very cool. New question, Rob. If our school tries the free trial, I'm assuming we will need to set some things up to see how it works. When we make our purchase, will the work we've invested need to be redone?
No, your trial account's fully functioning. So if you create students and classrooms and teachers and things like that, I mean, all of that's in there. You don't have to go then create another account. You basically have a 14-day free trial when you get started, and you kind of tool around with it and test things out. And if you decide that it's the right solution for you, you just go ahead and enter your payment information into the system. You can choose either an annual plan or a month-to-month plan, whatever works best for you. And or you can certainly contact us with any questions along the way. We strongly encourage you, in addition to the sessions that we're doing here, we do provide live web-based orientations as well, which are pretty comprehensive. They last a little over an hour, and we cover all the key aspects of the system. And so any members of your staff are certainly encouraged to participate in that, and our orientation calendar is available on our site if you click the contact link.
Rob, I'm assuming for a school like uh, Toby's, she would play around with the basic curriculum. Does it have the full scope and sequence we have here?
Yeah, the full scope and sequence is available. In addition, we make this publicly available. This is a resource that we're very proud of. There's a lot of people worked on, from the foundation and collaborating with us. It was a really, good group effort, and that's publicly available on our site, MontessoriCompass.com. So there's a click, you can click on the scope and sequence link and see all of that. And so you might want to consume it that way if you're just kind of investigating it and trying to figure out whether this is something that would work well for you. Feel free to look at it in this way as well. You can go into individual categories, and so say, for example, language arts, and then you can view in kind of an online magazine sort of a format here. It's not something that you can print out, but it's something that you could search a table of contents. You can search for keywords and just see how it's structured. So this may be helpful as well. And that's something that we make available to the Montessori community for free. We have a lot of homeschoolers that utilize this as a resource, so we're just happy to make this available, and it's been helpful to a lot of people. We
Got,
make a portion of the alignment available as well.
got a new question. Toby asks, will trying this before school start make sense, or do we need to wait until school starts? Which leads to the
Oh, I would
question of
definitely.
the summer discount.
Yeah, I would definitely do it. The sooner the better. And that's not me just trying to sell you something here, but you really need to become acclimated with it. As with any new program, there's a learning curve. While we feel it's intuitive and easy to use, and we've put a lot of effort and resources into doing so, to making it easy to use, it's still a learning curve, and it's something that we would recommend. The sooner you start, the better. And you kind of get everybody into the system and get acclimated, participate in some training sessions. We'll help you to get all your student and parent information into the system. We can import that automatically. So that's something that we'll get everybody in there. You get all your classrooms and teachers and everybody in there ready to go. So that way you're not trying to scramble to learn something new when your kids come back. When the students come in, I mean, you got your hands full. You don't need to be trying to learn something new at the same time. So it's really better to get acclimated sooner rather than later. And we do have a summer promo that's listed on the top of our site where we're offering a 20% discount for schools that choose an annual subscription.
Well, let's see. Rob, have we covered everything on the original plan for today?
Well, we have not covered the progress reports, and
Oh,
it's kind
wow.
of a big topic. We ran into a lot of questions that were outside of parent communication, and that's fine. I don't feel like, given that we have about 2 minutes left here, I think it'd be a little much to get into progress reports at this time. So I'd rather maybe hold that over until the next one.
Okay, so even though the fifth session says that it's administrators section, we will add progress reports in. And then if we find that we have a lot of people that really are confused about that, we will uh, certainly be happy to run some kind of individual webinar for people that are specifically concerned about that. So as we approach the last minute or two, let me just see if you have any last questions. This is your big chance. Send them in. I see a couple are coming in. I know the scope and sequence is not available for 7th and 8th grade, but do you have a curriculum in Montessori Compass for these grades? Stephanie, the answer is no, we don't, because there is no curriculum for those grades other than either what individual schools are creating or what is being presented by one or two particular teacher training programs. The problem is there is nothing out there that is really consistent. Everybody's doing their own thing. It's nothing like elementary. So the closest thing we've got is the Houston Montessori Center has a very, very complex scope and sequence of essentially their task cards that are used for grade 7 and 8. If the Houston Montessori Center wanted to provide that to Montessori Compass, I know that that could be imported, or if somebody who uses that wants to have it imported for their school, that certainly could be done. But there is nothing that the Montessori Foundation is comfortable saying is a national or international curriculum at that grade level. We are working on it, um, but it's not something that's even close to being ready yet. So that's one thing. But again, if you've got something you want imported, they certainly, Montessori Compass can do that for you. I have for myself, by the way, asked Rob and Anita about the possibility of at least dropping the National Common Core curriculum standards in temporarily, because those are skills that you know you want to be trying to make sure the kids master. Normally, you wouldn't look at the National Common Core curriculum. That would not that should be seamless and behind the scenes. But for the moment, that may be a temporary fix. Now, let's see. I hear a new one. This is Heather from Trinidad is saying, I need to upload the new scope and sequence and elements of the curriculum. How do we contact Rob? Well, you just did. Via email, phone, which is best? You just reach him.
Right. Actually, yeah, the best way to do that is go to our site, and if you already have an account and you used us last year and you do not presently have the latest version of Scope and Sequence, send us a support ticket so our support team can get you upgraded. You'll go click on the customer support link in the upper right corner here, and then you would click new support ticket and contact us that way, and we are very happy to make the new Scope and Sequence available to you.
Okay. I have somebody who's asking about contacting me offline. Rob, I'm sure you'd be happy to speak to someone as well offline, although we're doing a lot of furious meetings and telephone conferences and so forth. So it's not as if we're just sitting around here. Um, I will send anyone who asks for it my private information. Please understand you may have to set up an appointment because I'm going from one meeting to the next until late at night, 7 days a week. Um, but I'm sending this out to everyone because I've given it out before. That's my private cell phone number. And Rob, you can do that or not do it. I imagine you guys have enough on your plate, so I'm more than happy to do it. And
Well, you're certainly able to contact us anytime. We provide 7-day customer support. So again, the best way to get a hold of us if you're a customer and you have a question about something is to send us a support ticket, because that's monitored by multiple people, and that's something that we monitor 7 days a week. So we'll try to get back to you as quickly as possible. If you need an answer right away, you can feel free to give us a call. Our number is listed on our site. There's a contact link at montessoricompass.com, and you can certainly feel free to click here, and you could either send us a message here, or you can go ahead and give us a call. Either way, so feel free to call us anytime. The number, that number gets kind of routed around to us, to our cell phones, wherever we are. So we're very, very accessible, and our goal really is to make sure that everybody at your school is getting the most value out of Montessori Compass. We really want to establish a long-term relationship with you, and really do our best to not only provide good software but just exceptional customer service. We're very, very busy this time of year with back to school around the corner, but we really are going to do everything we possibly can to make sure that that we answer everyone's questions and do the best we can here.
thanks, Rob. We have one last question I can see came in. Is Martha Jimenez has asked, what are the plans about having all of this translated into Spanish?
Great question. Very something that is very high in our list to do is as we begin working with more and more countries from all different parts of the world, is we definitely aspire to have multi-language support at some point. It's much easier to do with the software, but the content, the scope and sequence is a much different thing. When you talk about if you picture a spreadsheet that just goes on for thousands and thousands and thousands of lines, that's our scope and sequence, and that's something that needs to be translated. And I suspect that's not something that we could do with robots, although Google Translate is a resource that we do use from time to time. I suspect that we would need somebody that actually understands Montessori and to go ahead and translate to their, to that native language.
Yeah.
So that's something that we aspire to do at some point, and if anyone's interested in helping with that, feel free to contact us. But it is something we will offer at some point, and Spanish is certainly very high in the list.
Thank you, Rob. Again, this is Tim Selden and Rob Amos. Rob is the founder and co-founder of Montessori Compass. I'm the president and one of the 5 founders of the Montessori Foundation. The Montessori Foundation is not like AMS or AMI or any other group. It is a resource to Montessori schools, to Montessori teachers, to Montessori societies. Our role is to try to figure out where there are needs in the Montessori community and to try to see what we can do either to help get people to work together to solve problems, or at times to partner with somebody like Rob and Anita Amos and their team to help them to translate what they've begun into an increasingly refined and effective product. Or from time to time, we actually develop products ourselves. As many of you know, we publish Tomorrow's Child magazine. I should mention that Montessori 101, which is a special issue that we do typically once every 5 or 6 years, is the back to school issue. An electronic read-only version of that is included in Montessori Compass, will be coming out pretty soon. And for those of you who get it at your schools, it is available, and it will be available for bulk purchasing for new families if you want over the next several years. I think that's about it for one day. We have covered a lot. We'll talk to you next time. Rob, do you remember what day our next meeting is?
I don't, but I know where to find it. So
Okay,
it's
you
it's
check
on
that
our
out.
site right here. Well, I
Yeah,
could just show everybody right here. Click
there you go.
contact webinar series. And the next one, the 5th one, the final one for this series is on the 20th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time.
And so let's see, the 20th is Tuesday, right?
I believe so.
Okay, so on Tuesday, we're going to not only cover what's mentioned there, which is administrative, we're going to really start with the progress report issue, which is of great interest to administrators as well. But those of you who are teachers and didn't get that in earlier webinars, we will be covering that for you. So without any further ado, unless Rob, you have anything else you want to say?
No, just again, thanks everyone. We've really just been very, very just thrilled to hear from just so many wonderful feedback from people from these webinars and out in Portland at the Montessori Congress from schools that we continue to talk to, and it's been very, very exciting. So both on behalf of Anita and myself and the other folks on our team here, we just want to thank everybody.
Indeed. And from the Montessori Foundation, this is Tim Selden saying have a great weekend, everyone.